5 Messerschmitts circle above him like wolves. The throttle is screaming. His wingmen are already gone. He is 23 years old, alone at 18,000 feet, and everyone said he thought too much to be a good pilot. Now geometry is the only thing keeping him alive. Spring of 1943. The air war over Europe has become a mathematics problem no one knows how to solve. American bomber crews are dying at rates that make insurance actuaries close their ledgers in silence. For every 100 men who ship out to England, statistical projections say 30 will not return. The odds worsen with every mission. By the 10th sortie, survival becomes less likely than a coin landing on its edge. Fighter escorts try to help, but the Luftwaffe knows its own sky. German pilots have years of combat seasoning. They recognize hesitation in a turn, fear in a climb. They exploit it without mercy. The P-47 Thunderbolt is heavy, tough, fast in a dive. In a turning fight, it is a liability. Messerschmitt 109s and Focke-Wulf 190s are lighter, tighter, more responsive at altitude. German doctrine is elegant. Force the Americans into a horizontal battle, then bleed them in spirals they cannot win. Most American pilots know this. They know the manual. They know the briefings. Energy tactics. Boom and zoom. Never turn with a 109. Everyone is taught the same thing. And still, men die. The 56th Fighter Group operates out of England, flying missions deep into occupied airspace. The pilots are young. Some have engineering degrees. Some have farm dirt still under their nails. All of them have watched friends tumble out of the sky, trailing smoke and silence. One of them is different, not because he is braver, not because he is faster on the stick, but because before he ever sat in a cockpit, he sat in a college classroom where a professor drew angles on a chalkboard and explained how objects fall through space. His name is Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson. He is called Classroom Kid by half his squadron. Not as a compliment. He overthinks. He asks too many questions during briefings. He sketches diagrams in the margins of his mission notes, calculating angles and velocities while others are drinking or writing letters home. He does not fit the mold of the instinctive fighter ace, the man who flies on reflex and bravado. But math does not care about bravado, and geometry does not know how to lie. If this story matters to you, tap like and subscribe so more wartime ingenuity is remembered. Robert Johnson grew up in Lawton, Oklahoma, dust storms and dry wind, a town where you fixed your own car or you walked. He was good with his hands, but better with his head. He enrolled at Cameron Junior College, studied engineering, loved physics. Not the abstract kind, but the kind you could see, how a lever multiplies force, how a wing generates lift, how an object accelerates under gravity. His professor once demonstrated projectile motion by dropping a wrench and a marble simultaneously from shoulder height. They hit the floor together. Johnson stared at that for a long time. When the war came, he enlisted in the Army Air Forces. Not out of romanticism. He simply believed aircraft made sense. Thrust, drag, lift, weight. Everything obeyed rules. Everything could be calculated. Flight training was harder than he expected. He was not a natural stick-and-rudder man. His instructors noted that he was precise but slow to react. He had a tendency to think through a maneuver before executing it. In combat, they warned, there would be no time to think. He graduated anyway. He was assigned to the 56th Fighter Group, 61st Fighter Squadron. He arrived in England in early 1943, clean-shaved and quiet. The veterans looked him over. Polite kid, a little stiff, probably would not last long. His first few missions were uneventful. He stayed in formation. He followed orders. He did not get separated. He did not panic, but he also did not score any kills. Some pilots racked up victories in their first week. Johnson just came home with fuel burns on his gloves and a notebook full of sketches. Other pilots ribbed him gently. They asked what he was drawing. Flight paths, he said, intercept angles, relative velocities in a dive. They laughed, not meanly, but with the easy dismissal of men who trust instinct over slide rules. One older pilot told him to stop thinking and start shooting. Another said the sky was not a classroom. Johnson nodded. He did not argue. But he kept sketching, because he had seen something, a pattern in how German fighters attacked, a predictable geometry in the way they positioned themselves for a killing pass. And he suspected there was a way to turn that predictability into a trap. He just needed to test it, alone, at speed, with his life as the variable. The problem was this: American fighters were almost always caught at a disadvantage. German pilots controlled the altitude. They lurked in the sun or high above the bomber stream, invisible until they committed. When they dove with speed and purpose. By the time an American escort spotted them, the energy gap was fatal. If you tried to climb into them, you bled airspeed. They slashed past, then zoomed back to altitude while you wallowed. If you turned to evade, they followed, tighter and tighter, until you were slow and defenseless. If you dived away, they followed, and because they started higher, they entered the dive with more energy, more speed. They closed the gap, lined up, and fired. The manual said to dive only as an escape if you had a significant head start. Otherwise, you were just dying in a straight line. Fighter tactics officers repeated this in every briefing. Do not dive unless you have separation. Do not let them get on your six. Do not fight alone. But Johnson kept thinking about that marble and that wrench. They fell at the same rate. Not because they weighed the same, but because gravity does not care about mass. It accelerates all objects equally in a vacuum. In air, drag matters. But at high altitude, the air is thin. A heavy fighter diving vertically experiences less drag relative to its mass than a lighter one. The P-47 weighs over 7 tons fully loaded. The Messerschmitt 109 weighs less than 4. In a straight dive, the Thunderbolt should fall faster, not because of engine power, because of inertia. Johnson pulled performance charts. He read engineering specs. He sketched velocity curves. On paper, it worked. The P-47 could outdive anything the Luftwaffe flew, assuming the pilot committed to a near-vertical angle and held it long enough for physics to take over. But no one did that in combat. A vertical dive was disorienting, violent, and dangerous. You redlined the airspeed indicator, the controls stiffened, the wings groaned. If you pulled out wrong, you could rip the tail off or black out from G-forces. And if you misjudged the altitude, you became a crater. So the tactic remained theoretical. Interesting on paper. Suicide in practice. Johnson brought it up once during a briefing. He suggested that a high-speed vertical dive might create enough separation to escape multiple attackers. The operations officer listened politely. Then he reminded Johnson that the descent rate would exceed safety margins, and that most pilots would lose situational awareness in a power dive that steep. Translation: it would get you killed. Johnson accepted that. He filed the idea away. He flew his missions. He stayed alive, but the losses continued. Good men, smart men, men who followed the manual and still died because the manual was not enough. And Johnson kept sketching angles in his notebook, wondering what would happen if someone ignored the manual and trusted the math instead. June 26, 1943. A bomber escort mission over the Pas-de-Calais. The weather is hazy. Visibility comes and goes. The bomber stream is stacked high and slow, a parade of aluminum waiting to be hit. The 56th flies top cover, weaving back and forth, scanning the pale sky for shadows. Johnson is flying Penrod and Sam, his assigned P-47. The name is stenciled below the canopy in white paint. He has flown her for 2 months now. He knows how she handles when the tanks are full, how the stick feels at 400 miles per hour, how the engine sounds when she is about to overheat. The radio is quiet, too quiet. Then the call comes. Bandits. High. 8 o'clock. Johnson cranes his neck. He sees them. Tiny dots, glinting. Then they are not dots anymore. They are fighters, rolling into attack dives. Focke-Wulf 190s. His squadron breaks. The sky becomes a tangle of smoke trails and tracer fire. Johnson pulls hard, trying to stay with his element leader. The G-forces shove him into his seat. His vision tunnels. He blinks, gasps, forces blood back into his eyes. When his vision clears, his element leader is gone. He is alone. He scans. Left, right, above. Empty. Then his stomach tightens. He glances back over his shoulder. 5 of them. Messerschmitt 109s. Climbing toward him in a loose spread. Experienced. Patient. They do not rush. They know he has nowhere to go. Johnson's heart is pounding. His hands are slick inside his gloves. He thinks through his options. He cannot outclimb them. He cannot outturn them. If he runs straight and level, they will close and bracket him. The manual says to call for help and evade until support arrives. But no one is coming. The radio is a chaos of crosstalk. Every other American is fighting his own war. Johnson takes a breath. He thinks about the notebook, the sketches, the equations, the marble and the wrench. He thinks about the one thing he has that they do not, mass. He rolls inverted. The horizon flips. The earth is above him now, brown and green and distant. He pulls the stick forward, not gently, not tentatively, all the way. The nose drops. The altimeter spools backward. The P-47 falls. Not a shallow dive, not a fighting descent. Vertical. The airspeed indicator climbs. 300 knots, 350, 400. The engine roars. The airframe shudders. Wind screams past the canopy. Johnson's vision vibrates. His teeth ache. The stick is heavy, almost immovable. The plane does not want to do this. It was not designed for this. He holds it anyway. 450 knots. The needle is kissing the red line. If he goes faster, something might fail. A control surface might buckle. A wing spar might crack. But if he pulls out now, they will catch him. He glances back. The Messerschmitts followed. Of course they did. 5 of them, noses down, cannons armed. They expect him to level out. They expect panic. They expect the same mistakes every other American has made. Johnson does not level out. He angles the dive steeper, 70 degrees, 80, nearly straight down now. The earth is growing, filling the windscreen. Fields, roads, villages, details he should not be able to see from this altitude. The Germans follow. But something changes. Their spacing widens. Their noses begin to drift. They are used to pursuing targets that dive at 50 degrees, maybe 60. Targets that shallow out after a few thousand feet. This is different. This is a fall, not a flight. And the P-47 is accelerating faster than they are, 470 knots. Johnson can barely move the stick. His arms are trembling. His breathing is shallow, rapid. Sweat stings his eyes. He cannot wipe it away. Both hands are locked on the controls. The Messerschmitts are lighter. In a turn, that is an advantage. In a vertical dive, it is a liability. Drag increases with speed, but inertia scales with mass. The Thunderbolt is a brick, and bricks fall fast. Physics does not negotiate. The altimeter is unwinding like a broken watch. 15,000 feet, 12,000. Johnson knows he has to pull out soon, but not yet. If he pulls too early, they will still have him. If he pulls too late, He will not pull at all. 10,000 feet. He glances back again. The Messerschmitts are falling behind. Not by much, but enough. Their dive angles are shallower. Their pilots are human, and humans have limits. The human body does not want to fall straight down at 500 miles per hour while the altimeter screams and the ground rushes up like a fist, 8,000 feet. Johnson begins the pull, not a jerk, a steady, firm pull. The stick resists. He uses both hands, both arms, his shoulders, his core. The nose rises. 1 degree, 2, 5. The G-forces slam into him. His vision grays. The edges collapse into tunnel vision. He grunts, tightens his stomach, forces blood into his brain. The horizon tilts. The earth rotates. The sky returns. 6,000 feet. The nose is level, then climbing. He gasps. His lungs burn. His hands are shaking. The throttle is still wide open. The engine is howling, but it is still running. The wings are still attached. He looks back. The Messerschmitts are gone. Not shot down, not crashed, just gone. Somewhere far above, still diving or leveling out or searching for a target that no longer exists. Johnson is alone again, but this time he is alive. He turns west. He checks his fuel. Enough. Barely. He limps back to England. He lands. He shuts down the engine. He sits in the cockpit for a long time, staring at his hands. They are still shaking. The intelligence officer debriefs him. Johnson describes the engagement. 5 fighters. Vertical dive. Separation achieved. No kills, but no losses. The officer writes it down without comment. Other pilots hear about it. At first, there is skepticism. A vertical dive to escape? That is not tactics. That is desperation. But Johnson is alive, and 5 Germans are not chasing him anymore. A few pilots ask him about it. How steep? How fast? How did you pull out? Johnson tries to explain. He talks about mass and inertia and drag coefficients. Some of them listen. Some of them walk away. One pilot tries it 3 days later. He dives away from 2 Focke-Wulfs, commits to a steep angle and escapes clean. He comes back buzzing with adrenaline and disbelief. It worked. It actually worked. Word spreads. Not officially. The manual does not change. Briefings do not include vertical dive geometry. But in the ready rooms, in the dispersal huts, pilots start talking about it. The P-47 can outdive anything. If you are caught, do not turn. Do not climb. Point the nose straight down and let gravity do the work. It saves lives, not hundreds, not thousands, but enough. A pilot here, a wingman there. Men who would have died in a turning fight instead come home with sweat-soaked flight suits and a new respect for physics. Johnson himself uses it again. July, August, September. Every time he is outnumbered, every time the geometry turns against him, he rolls inverted and falls. Every time he survives. By autumn, he is no longer called Classroom Kid. He is called Bob, or sometimes just Johnson. A few of the younger pilots ask him to explain the math. He does, sketching on napkins and the backs of maps. Some of them get it. Some of them just nod and trust that it works. The tactic spreads beyond the 56th. Other P-47 squadrons begin experimenting. Pilots in the 8th Air Force start comparing notes. The Thunderbolt is heavy and awkward in a dogfight, but it dives like a meteor. Use that. Do not fight their fight. Fight physics. The Luftwaffe notices. German after-action reports begin describing American fighters that refuse to engage, instead diving vertically at suicidal speeds. Some German pilots assume it is panic. Others recognize it as doctrine. The tactic does not win the war, but it shifts the calculus. It turns a disadvantage into an option. It gives American pilots a way out when there should be none. And it all started because one quiet lieutenant from Oklahoma believed that a marble and a wrench fell at the same speed and wondered what that might mean at 18,000 feet. Robert S. Johnson finishes the war with 27 confirmed kills. He becomes one of the top American aces in Europe. He is awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, and a chest full of other decorations he rarely talks about. But the victories are not what he remembers most. Years later, he writes about the war, not with bravado, not with glory. He writes about fear, about math, about the moment he rolled inverted and trusted something invisible to save his life. He describes the dive as a conversation between terror and logic. His body screamed at him to pull out. His training told him it was insane. But his mind, the part that had sat in a classroom and watched objects fall, told him to hold the stick forward. He held it. And the math was right. The vertical dive tactic becomes a quiet footnote in fighter doctrine. It is not glamorous. It does not win dogfights. It does not produce gun camera footage or dramatic victory rolls. But it works. And in a war where working is the same as surviving, that is enough. Johnson returns to Oklahoma after the war. He lives a long life. He does not boast. When people ask him how he survived so many missions, he does not talk about courage or instinct. He talks about geometry, about angles, about trusting the numbers even when your body is screaming at you to stop. He dies in 1998 at the age of 78. By then, the P-47 is a museum piece. The men who flew it are old or gone. The skies over Europe are peaceful, traced with contrails from airliners full of passengers who do not think about altitude or dive angles or how fast a 7-ton fighter falls. But the lesson remains. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust something you cannot see. Sometimes survival is not about fighting harder, but thinking clearer. Sometimes the difference between living and dying is a notebook full of sketches and the willingness to let go of the horizon. Johnson was called Classroom Kid because he thought too much. But thinking is what kept him alive, and thinking is what brought him home. In the end, the sky does not care about instinct. It does not care about bravery. It cares about physics, and physics, if you trust it, does not let you down. Robert Johnson trusted it. He fell toward the earth at 500 miles per hour, and the earth let him pull away. Not because he was lucky, because he was right. And being right, even once, in a war that made no sense, was enough to change everything.